Chapter 22. No, you are not a Bulbasaur sexual. Allow me to tell you the tale of two gay guys. The first is about my best friend. He is a homosexual. He's had the occasional boyfriend, but if you ever met him, you would never know. Matter of fact, he's known people for years who didn't know he was gay. But it's not because he's somehow ashamed of it or purposely keeps it from people. He just doesn't care that he's gay. If you were to talk to him, what he is most likely to talk about are things that interest him. His career as an actuary, his love for art history, and sculpture, his obsession with kayaking and water sports, as well as his appetite for philosophical and intellectual conversation. Rarely, if ever, does the topic of his sexuality come up, because it's just not that important to him. He just likes dick. Now, do you want to go kayaking or not? The other story is about a man I do not know. I was at a basement bar in downtown Chicago, ordering myself a cocktail on a cold, wintry night. The bar was very peaceful and calm, with other bargoers enjoying hot toddies and the like. But this serenity was pierced with a loud, bombastic man talking on his cell phone coming down the hallway, who you could hear long before you could see him. And before you even caught a glimpse of the man, you already knew he was gay. He was loud, he had a purposed and forced lisp, and whether or not you wanted to be privy to his phone conversation, it didn't matter. He was going to share with everybody about how, "Tina, you should dump that man, girlfriend. He's no good for you." Sure enough, when he sat 3 chairs down from me, the stereotype in my mind was confirmed. He was an impeccably dressed, effeminate gay man, with a loud scarf, perfectly manicured hands, and some kind of product in his hair that made it gleam. And just as we were forced to hear his conversation with Tina, we would also be forced to hear his thought process about ordering a drink from the bartender, replete with a forced stereotypical lisp. "Oh my goodness, it's just so cold out there. Let me see, I just have to collect myself. Okay, let me see, I'm like totally not in a bourbon mood right now, but OMG boyfriend, when aren't I?" I decided to slam my drink and get out of there as quickly as possible, because whatever peace and serenity I was enjoying at the bar was ruined and never coming back. I also had a newfound appreciation of my gay friend, for merely being a cool guy who just happened to be gay. Now, there are 2 types of people in this world when it comes to sexuality: binary and non-binary. You are either straight or you are not. And within the non-binary community, there are, not kidding, 112 subgenders at last count. But whether you are gay, lesbian, bi, pansexual, jimmygender, or vapogender, within this non-binary group, there are really just 2 general groups of people. People who actually happen to be non-binary, and people who may or may not be non-binary, but can't shut the hell up about it. We once again see that familiar refrain of using a trait as a tool to beget value, attention, and even money. And we needn't go over the underlying machinations of this again, but just like claiming you have a mental illness when you don't comes with a slew of costs and consequences, claiming you are a Bulbasaur sexual when you're not does as well. First, your sexuality is not only closely related to your mental health, but is an integral part of it. Who you are attracted to, who you have sex with, and who you inevitably love plays a huge role in your overall happiness and mental health. And if you're going to be intellectually dishonest with yourself about your sexuality in order to gain popularity or attention, you will impair your actual sexuality, and thus your ability to enjoy life. Second, much as people mock the 31 flavors of gender, sexuality is no joke. There certainly are not 112 genders, but there are people who are indeed not straight. This brings in a whole slew of challenges for these people when it comes to figuring out their actual sexuality. But teachers, academics, the media, attention whores, and even parents complicate matters with both an unrealistically long list of genders and the added social and political pressure to align with one for acceptance, popularity, or social gain. Not being straight is already an uphill battle. You needn't make it more complicated for non-binary people with idiotic concepts like omnisexuality. Third, claiming you're non-binary when you're straight is an insult to those who actually are. It's no different than how faking a mental illness to get a disability check is an egregious insult to those suffering from actual mental illness. And to people who are genuinely non-binary, you mock them choosing your gender like a shirt. Something you like and goes well with your pants, and apparently something you can change at a whim or when it suits you. You're already likely a loser if you're tempted to choose a gender because it will make you popular. You don't have to go through with it, making you a poser and a hypocrite on top of it. Fourth, this 112 flavors of gender is childish and stupid, putting it on par with astrology. It's not biology, it's not neurochemistry, it isn't even psychology. It's the average teenage or 20-something gossip girl reading her horoscope in the tabloid section of the grocery store. It's a dumb game unintelligent people play, and really stupid people believe. But if the whole point of identifying your sexuality is to find your true love in life, claiming you're a pansexual or a sapiosexual is the worst way to go about it. Because even if the future love of your life is standing right in front of you at a party, if you're bragging about how you're a Psyduck sexual or Zubat sexual, you're obviously putting more emphasis on attention whoring than you are finding a person you're romantically interested in. That, and you sound like a freaking idiot. And nobody wants to fall in love with a dumbass. Finally, even though everyone having their own unique gender is unfathomably stupid, you can never underestimate the power of people's laziness. Because if people are willing to fool themselves into thinking they're mentally ill, even to the point that they'll do drugs to prove it, people will also force themselves to believe they're non-binary to do the same. And presenting these weak-minded people with a custom-made gender that will make them unique and special is just too tempting for many to refuse. Here we go into a truly dark place because this is not using your race or gender to make some money on some affirmative action program. This is changing who you sleep with, or at least claim to sleep with, all to garner some attention. This is, in some rarer instances, taking hormones or getting surgery to change your actual gender. This is all perfectly fine if you were honest with yourself up front about your sexuality. But if you had the ulterior motive of a life of free value and are living a lie, the mental price you will pay for being a gender you're not is incalculable. We needn't review the costs and consequences of placing a trait at the center of your life. They've been detailed and reviewed in previous chapters: race, gender, etc. But the mental confusion and torment that comes with living as a gender you're not, or simply holding your otherwise authentic gender as the only thing of value in life, is a guaranteed way to make yourself miserable. I cannot think of a more confused or tortured life as one where people put their gender, authentic or not, ahead of themselves. Still, people do. And that is why the gay man at the bar, despite being genuinely gay, was an absolutely miserable soul who was in reality talking to himself. And that is also why my best friend, despite being non-binary, has entire families of friends who are only more than happy to go hiking with him. One was lying to himself. The other was honest. We can go on about this sexual identity horse and pony show older generations have forced upon the younger. But in short, younger generations have three options when it comes to determining their sexualities, binary or not. 1. They can continue the cute millennial shit show where they choose designer sexualities from an ever-growing list, all as they vainly attempt to attention whore. 2. They can join the dark side, placing their gender, authentic or not, chosen or not, at the center of their lives, and become some kind of miserable activist that throws a temper tantrum if people don't use their preferred pronouns. Or 3. They can just have the bravery and courage to admit what their sexuality is, and live life accordingly. Unless you want to suffer the pain and headache the current generation of buffoons are when it comes to choosing a sexual identity like a shirt, I'd strongly recommend making your life easier and choose option number 3.